Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Solution Heroes. This is the show where we dive deep with leaders who are shaping the future of solution engineering. I'm Chris Mabry, VP of Solutions at Reprise. I'm here to have real conversations with the leaders who are solving the toughest challenges in our profession today. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Yuji Higashi, somebody who needs no introduction, but I'll share that he's the co-founder of Better Career, PreSales Collective, and today he helps pre-sales and sales ICs and leaders land jobs, build strategic networks, and accelerate their careers. Yuji, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Always good to chat with you and excited about the conversation and just excited to continue to work together on, elevating the pre-sales community. So excited to be here.
Me too. I mean, it's been something that you've been focused on for many years. And I cannot wait to get into this conversation with you because I also like to, I'm somebody who's, what I say is I nerd out on the whole pre-sales career in general. I'm
Yeah.
super passionate about it. And what I love about what you're doing at Better Career is the game has changed, and you guys are out there speaking the good word. So I will drop, if you guys aren't following Yuji or Better Career yet on LinkedIn, please do. They always highlight. One of my favorite highlights you guys do, and you and Maddie do this, is you do the, we had 5 people accept roles last week or last month.
Yeah.
And then you actually go into highlighting like specifics roles and like OTE, and you have some really unique stories.
Yeah, it's what we do every day as far as coaching people and in the job search and helping specifically SCs, SC leaders, and also AEs get that next job. And the market has been challenging over the last several years. And so folks are having a hard time sometimes with figuring out how to navigate the market and get in that next job that really excites them and also pays them what they're worth. And so it can be certainly a challenging process for folks. And so we coach them through that. And it is fun to do those posts when we get them to the other side and they ultimately accept that job offer that they're excited about. And usually it's a pretty meaningful increase in their comp, or it's just a better situation for them overall with more growth potential. And so, yeah, we love doing those posts and sharing success stories because a lot of people can also learn from it too. And also just, get maybe motivation and inspiration from others. And so we really enjoy sharing those stories.
Yeah, and speaking of the market, we're recording this today. It's August 2025. And based on, you guys have like 400 plus clients you've helped at Better Career thus far. What's your read on the sales engineering job market right now? Are we seeing like a stabilization? Some reports suggest that, or is it still pretty turbulent?
Yeah, I'd say it's getting better. It's certainly gotten better over the last several months and year. I would say that the improvements have been very steady, right? We're not going any sort of V-shape recovery on the job market. It's very, very steady. There is still some imbalance in the market. What I mean by that is there are companies that are still struggling and laying off. In fact, before this call, I had a couple conversations with folks that were laid off this week from their organization. So that's still happening. But then you have a lot of companies on the other side that are growing like crazy and can't hire fast enough. So it's this really interesting imbalance where there's pockets of excessive hire, or not excessive hiring, but heavy hiring. And there's other pockets of companies that are still trying to find their way and restructuring. And so it's still fairly imbalanced and I would say competitive overall. I think for experienced SCs who are individual contributors, that market has actually improved quite a bit and is much more balanced than it's been in the past, especially in the last probably 3 to 6 months. So if you're a senior SC, IC looking for a new role, you have a decent chance at getting a good role. The SC leader market, so managers, directors, VPs, remains to be very tight. And that just is an artifact of a lot of the org flattening that we've seen across a lot of organizations. A lot of middle managers have been let go or laid off. And so there's a lot of talent, really good SC leaders who are in the market looking for roles. And there's just a very limited amount of roles that are out there, especially for external hiring. Because as we know with SC leader positions, a lot of them are filled internally. And so the amount of roles available externally remains to be fairly limited. So SC leader roles are fairly competitive still. And then on the entry level or like the first time SC market side of things, that is also still very challenging. We do have some first-time SEs who have transitioned into their first SE role recently, even, but it remains pretty hard because there's just a lot of experienced SE talent out there. So employers don't really have a strong reason to take a chance on somebody that hasn't been an SE before, unless that person can really demonstrate why they're a better fit for the role than maybe somebody that has a few years of SE experience. So that's, different pockets of different hiring is what it looks like today, and just based on your level of experience, the market looks a little different. But I would say overall, generally speaking, the market is getting steadily better every month that passes. So we hope that trend will continue.
I hope so too. And what you pointed out is really it's interesting to look at that breakdown between like first time SEs, leaders, and
Yeah.
ICs with little experience. It seems like there's a sweet spot right now. Maybe it's time for us who've jumped into management and leadership to roll up our sleeves and do demos again.
We've
Are
had
you
some,
seeing
yeah.
that happen?
Yeah, we've had some SC leaders who've said, either in some cases they feel like they just have to go to IC role because they're having too hard of a time getting a leader role, and then some are just like, man, SC leadership is tough right now, right? There's a lot of demands, tight budgets, your under teams are understaffed, and the comp has actually come down too on SC leader roles in a lot of cases. So some folks are just saying, I'd rather just be an IC again for a while. And so we've seen some SC leaders take a step back, so to speak. But for them, from a lifestyle perspective, it actually is better for them. So yeah, we've seen some of that as well.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
could go down that rabbit hole. The market on the entry level pieces, you've been focused on and kicked off the pre-sales academy, arguably the best, most successful entry level pre-sales enablement course. I wouldn't even call it a course. It was like a fully blown experience,
Boot camp, yeah, like a boot camp program. Yeah.
like a boot camp. But I mean, it was very good.
Yeah.
And in the past couple of years, we've seen companies really shift the way that they hire people. What are
Right.
some of the biggest shifts you're seeing in what companies actually want from solution engineers today versus what they were looking for that 2 to 3 years ago?
Yeah, a few years ago, I think employers were and hiring managers were a lot more open to different profiles and being open to teaching more of the skills or domain expertise. I think now employers have can be a bit more selective in how they hire, and so we have seen a lot of employers be very, very focused on very niche technical skills or domain expertise. And in a lot of cases, they don't really waver from that. They don't want to try to teach that. And even to the degree, I mean, we do some recruiting actually for Better Career too. And so we actually recruit for some companies where they do have very specific SC requirements for tech skills or domain experience that are really hard to find. And so we help them source and find those SCs. So we have seen a lot of that where companies will just be very steadfast in the fact that they really want specific tech skills and domain experience, and they don't really waver from that. And that's tough because in a lot of cases, that narrows the pool of people they can hire substantially, and it also makes it hard for other SEs out there to get those roles if they don't have the specific tech skills or domain expertise they're looking for. But what we suggest for a lot of SEs who are looking for roles more broadly is really, yes, go try to build your technical skill set a little bit to the extent that it's enough to get the job. Because the reality is you're going to learn most of the technical skills and the depth and the domain expertise in the role. So you need to learn, if you want to get this job, you need to learn just enough to be dangerous and conversational about those things in an interview to get the job. And so that's where like the most important thing that we teach SCs, which can be counterintuitive to some, is soft skills and being able to clearly articulate and communicate how your existing skills and experience translate really well into whatever that employer, that hiring team is looking for on the domain or technical skills side of things. So if you can make that gap seem really small through how you communicate your transferable skills, you have a much higher chance of getting that role, even if that employer is requiring a lot of specific skills or domain expertise that maybe you don't have on paper. But if you can communicate really well how you're going to get those skills, how you're already getting those skills, and how you already have a lot of transferable skills, you're going to make yourself a lot more competitive for those type of roles. But I will say that's the biggest shift we've seen in how companies and employers are looking at hiring differently than it used to be.
Yeah, that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
and in some ways, it kind of confirms some of the conversations I've had where there's I've had a handful of people reach out who are like full stack developers who say, I want to get into being an SE. And I
Yeah.
just had a conversation with our head of engineering, Yuri, on this, which is what is the difference? What is the role? What do you how do you make that transition? What I typically say is, what is the like? What are the tools you love using today in your role?
Yeah.
Those companies have SEs, and those companies need people who have used the tool and understand how to use and deploy and manage with that tool.
Yeah.
So go connect with the solution engineers of those companies.
Right.
Reach out and say, "Can I have 10 minutes of your time? I love using XYZ product." Ask them about what it's like to be a solution engineer there. And like, if you're a full stack developer today, or if you're in a different industry and you're going to be using some sort of platform or software, even if you're a teacher, you're going to be using some sort of classroom management tool. And
Yeah.
that classroom management tool takes a lot of different learnings that an educator is going to have. Approach that company and say, I'm an educator. I use this tool every single day. I want to get out of this. I want to go work for you. That's like, to me, that's going to get a conversation at least.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, SE managers love hiring former customers or former users, or, so yeah, the more experience you have with the tool, like that's going to give you a leg up from potentially somebody that doesn't have exposure to that solution or that platform. So yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely.
I always say, like, find the problem, like fall in love with the problem the company is
Yeah.
solving. You know,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's
when I
huge.
came to Reprise, it was like I love the problem of scaling pre-sales companies or pre-sales organizations, and there are companies that solve that particular problem. So if I can focus on the problem itself, it's like all the tech will figure it all out, and that's helped me a lot.
Yeah. In fact, that's how we talk about with our clients or candidates who are interviewing for roles. Oftentimes you'll get asked, why do you want to work for this company? And the place to start is not why this company is great for you and your career and all that. I mean, that's important too. But the place to start in that response to that question is, why are the big problems that they're solving as an organization and why they exist? Like, what problems are they solving that you're excited about and you're passionate about? Like, start there
Yeah.
and then talk about the technology and why the role in the company is good for your career. Because if you start there, that you're much more aligned to that role in that company than if you start the other way around. So I'm glad you brought that up.
No, that's key.
Yeah.
And you made me think of like the popular AI founders right now who are all talking about the problem they're solving and humanity, and they're sort of giving us some sort of cultural lesson on how it won't replace people and things. But in
Yeah.
doing so, what they're doing is they're obsessing over the problem, and that's how they go and talk on stage.
Right.
It's almost like if you approach the interview the same way, obsess about the problem they're solving, and bring some credible knowledge to solving the problem.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Speaking of AI, I use AI every day. I use it for all sorts of things. I'm sure you're seeing in this in hiring. So if you're in the market and you're wondering, like, what am I going to get asked in these interviews? What are people looking for? How has AI impacted hiring today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Certainly there's a lot of influence of AI in just the hiring process. Like, people are, writing their resumes with AI. Even hiring managers are trying to evaluate talent using AI. But I think the main thing that is happening as far as the interview processes go with a lot of roles, but especially SC roles, is what we see is being fluent in AI and leveraging all the AI tools and LLMs that exist is really becoming table stakes now. It's kind of like when we used to see on resumes, people would list Microsoft Word and Google Suite, right? Like, that stuff's just obvious and table stakes. If you don't have that, then you're kind of not a knowledge worker or a corporate professional. So you have to have AI as like it's like found. It has to be the fabric of how you operate and built into your daily workflow. And so employers are going to ask about that in interviews. They're going to ask about how you're using AI in your job today, in your workflow. How are you using it to be more efficient and more effective? How are you using it in your personal life, right? What they want to see is are you just using kind of simple prompting in ChatGPT, or are you taking it a step further to actually build out much more complex workflows and systems that really help you in your day to day, whether it's with account research, right, or automating proposal documents, or of course there's a lot of tools that are purpose built that are AI native that teams will have to leverage. But I think what a lot of employers are looking for are SEs, especially SCs who need to be the tip of the spear when it comes to the tech, be the ones that are really leaning in and kind of being at the forefront of understanding the application of AI as it relates to their role and as it relates to also their technology suite as well. So I would say that you have to come into those interviews really with sound stories and examples of how you're using AI that go beyond just kind of the basics of asking ChatGPT some questions throughout the day. And so, the more you can have really concrete examples of that, I think the more competitive you're going to be in a lot of these AE or sorry SC and even AE roles. AEs are getting asked the same thing, but I would say SCs more so because they're intended to be strong technologists.
My mind goes when you're telling me that. My mind was thinking, if I showed up to an interview with like a vibe coded,
Yeah.
AI prompted application, even something very simple that relates to the problem they're solving, my intuition says that would put me way high on their list. Is that correct, or do you think that would be like too much?
No, that's 100%. That's how you stand out, right? Most people aren't doing that. Most people are still relying on their resume and LinkedIn and having a good conversation to try to get a job. The people that are really standing out are doing exactly like things like that, where they're demonstrating and showing that they have the skills and the curiosity and the knowledge to go and build something like that versus just talking about it. So, it's important to be able to talk about it clearly in a story and example, but it's 10 times better to show it. And so the example that you gave is exactly what we coach our clients on to really differentiate and be competitive and stand out in the process. So I love that you brought that example up.
That's cool. I mean,
Yeah.
if I were interviewing with you, Yuji, and I was like, and you have a huge network. You have almost 40,000 followers on LinkedIn. Like if you put a roll out, I imagine it's a flood. If I said, hey, Yuji, like I've actually created this tool that scrapes all the common job boards and creates a solution engineering job board with the Better Career logo on it. And here's how I think it would look differently, would that be something that piques your interest? Where you're like, wow, Chris actually built this before he even got on? Like,
100%.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
And we've had candidates that have done that for not the job or example, but have built out specific types of tech or processes or whatever with through vibe coding, and they've presented that to hiring managers, and they've gotten jobs ultimately through doing exactly that by doing something creative to show them that they're capable of leveraging AI in different ways, and that was very impressive. And we've had a lot of especially for first time SCs. For first time SCs, if you're relying just on your resume, you're going to lose out every time because you don't have SC titles. On paper, you don't have the experience, and so you have to really show that you have the capability and the drive and the initiative to do something like that. And the example you gave right there is a great way to show a hiring manager that you have what it takes to be successful in the role, and that's going to get your foot in the door and ultimately get you the job. So we really encourage people to do that and we have a lot of ideas that we share too, and templates and things that we do to help people get there faster. But these days you can do so much with what's out there, even for free or for very little cost, and with the tools that exist, that there's really no reason to not do something like what you just described.
And I think the benefit, besides me applying to Better Career after this with this cool tool,
Yeah,
the benefit to having your expertise though is like as somebody who's if you're in the market, you don't know how far to go at what stage, and it's nice to
yeah,
have guidance from people who are working with job seekers every day to
right.
say like, well, I'm at the initial stage. I've gone through the screening interview. Should I go and build that thing, or do you think I'm actually going to get this? Because I don't want to waste time on this one.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we guide
Yeah.
our clients through, step by step, and talk it through depending on the situation, depending on where they are in the process, and really guide them step by step through that. And you're right. Like if you haven't gone through it, it's hard to know when to do what in the process throughout the interview process or the hiring process. And so that's a lot of what we work together with our clients on to help them navigate.
What do you think about I'm if you don't know me and you're listening, thank you so much for joining. Most people know that I was the general manager of PreSales Collective. I do a lot of events. I do a lot of in-person work. I don't exactly love travel, but I know it impacts me as just as a human to connect with other humans in real life. I get a lot from it. I know they get some from it. I hope they get as much from it as I do. But I feel like networking, people say networking, and I put it in air quotes if you're listening, because I think that the word networking is just like assuming non-genuine connections. Let's assume that you're networking on purpose and you're making actual genuine connections with people. I've always found that to be the absolute key to work. You want to work with people you know and trust, and have maybe met before and had a good interaction with.
Yeah.
Do you feel like networking is still playing such a vital role? Do you think that's changed at all?
Absolutely. I mean, especially in a digital world where a lot of our digital communication is written by AI. I mean, most of the emails I send or receive are drafted or written mostly by AI, right? So I think that human connection through conversation, whether it's through a Zoom or it's face to face, is going to be even more important going forward. And at the end of the day, in my experience, I've benefited greatly from network and connections I've made, throughout my career, and I know you have too. And so I think, yeah, anybody I talk to ever, I say you have to invest in your network and be intentional about building your network and building relationships, because it's going to help you throughout your career. You don't know where those connections will help, right? Sometimes it'll seem random, but the more you can invest in helping people and giving to your network and giving the people around you and creating more connections, genuine connections, like meaningful connections, right? Those are the most important. And but yeah, I mean, I'm a big proponent about being intentional about building out your network, whether that's internal within your organization, that's very important, but also externally as well, because the reality is most people, especially in tech, don't spend that many years at one company or before they move to the next one. And so having a strong external network is also very important. So 100% network is one of the top things to consider and think about and put energy into when it comes to building a career.
Yeah. And what I would suggest too, I mean, that's good confirmation, because I was wondering, like, I honestly think with all these tools and all the AI tools I use to write content and do stuff, it makes me actually want to do less and less of that and be just much more off the cuff and natural. But I do approach networking in a more curious and genuine way. I'm not out to collect numbers,
Yeah.
like and I think a lot of people think of me as like a major extrovert because I do so much.
Hmm.
I have a time limit on that. I'm actually kind of a secret introvert.
Yeah.
I'm super introspective. I like alone time, So what I do is, even in a room of 50 people, you may find five that you genuinely connect with, and there's just an energy to it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, I just really love. For some reason, I've sat and talked to this person a lot longer than others. My suggestion is to stick with that. Don't try to ruin that by going and meeting 12 other people you don't know. It's almost like when you said the word genuine connections, that's what I think of. Am I off base on that? Because I almost think it's like quality over quantity when it comes to your network, instead of like I'm going to meet 100 people tomorrow and I'm going to give everybody my LinkedIn and I hope I'm going to find a job.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, quality and depth is very important. Breadth is too, but to an extent, right? You don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
just go out and make random connections. Like you want to have some level of depth with every. It's gonna be vary, right? You're gonna have deep relationships with some than others, but yeah, you want those connections to be genuine and that's really important. So yeah, but the more deep connections you can have across your network, the better. And so and that takes intention and it takes energy and it takes time too to build
Yes.
that. But
It's
I will
harder
say
for
that,
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But anybody that's really focused on doing that over the long term, it's definitely a long term thing too, right? You can't just meet somebody and it turn into something great overnight. But I think anybody that has invested deeply in their network over a multi-year career starts to see dividends from it, and I certainly have in my career, and I know you have too. So yeah, I mean, network is vital to a good career.
You and I are a perfect example of that. I think we met, I don't even know how many years ago now. And here we are.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, different
exactly.
logos on the shirts, but at the same time, I think we're still very dedicated to this profession and the craft, and we're
Yeah.
trying to push ourselves and each other to get better. And I love what I see what you're doing with your events and your business. I think you have great business partners too, with Maddie and Nina and your team. It just seems like you're building something that's built for the long term.
Yeah, that's the goal. And our goal is to be very referral based, right? We don't spend anything on marketing. We post on LinkedIn, of course, but a lot of our clients come through referrals and people that we've worked with and who recommend us to their friends and their family and their colleagues. And so, and that's what's important, right? Is to really build relationships, deep relationships with our clients. A lot of our clients are good friends of ours now too, right? And so that's how we choose to want to continue to build this business for the long term, and that's how we feel like we can build a sustainable business.
You are doubling down on networking so much, it's actually your business model. That's so
Yeah, which we
cool.
love. We love, and that's why we're also getting on the recruiting side of things, so we can be kind of the ultimate connector between talent and hiring, and make connections where we can. We love being in the middle of all that. It's a lot of fun, and we genuinely enjoy it, especially within pre-sales and sales. We love working with folks in those areas, in those roles especially. So it's been a lot of fun.
And we focused a lot on the on the perspective of somebody who's in the market or maybe even curious. Maybe you've been somewhere for 5 years and you're like, hey, I wonder what it's like out there. Um, let's focus on the hiring manager's perspective because I mean, I just added somebody to my team recently, and there's a different view, right? Let's focus on the mistakes first because that's part of my favorite. I always give the bad news first. But what are some of the bigger mistakes companies are making when they're trying to fill roles right now that you're witnessing? Because I'm sure you're seeing some trends.
Yeah, I would say that, and this is, grain of salt. I think there's a lot of hiring managers who have different perspectives on this, and depending on the types of role and the exact skill set that you need for your specific product set and company, it can vary. But broadly, some of the challenges I think that, or maybe mistakes that hiring teams I think are making are, one, going back to the other point that I made, is that hiring managers are being very narrowly focused on a specific skill set or domain expertise. And the reality is that there's so few people out there that have that depth in what you're
Yeah.
looking for. You're kind of looking for a unicorn, and if you're not willing to pay for that, then it becomes very challenging you to fill the role. And so sometimes what happens is then you're waiting 6 months to fill the role when you could have had somebody that maybe doesn't have all of that, but has a lot of really strong potential and can learn quickly and would have been able to make an impact on the business in that 6 months where that role has been vacant. So I think, there's a lot of focus still on along the lines of skills and domain expertise, also just experience. I think some managers are too reliant on and focused on hiring for experience versus maybe bringing somebody in that's a little junior that has the ability to learn and grow quickly. And because, I know probably you've experienced too, but the best SEs that I've ever hired, that I've ever known, are not the ones that know it all coming in, but they're the ones that can learn quickly and figure it out quickly. And those folks typically have the most upside as well. So I think there's just a big reliance on hiring people with experience. And I think that is an artifact of the market that we've been in, and hiring managers being in a position where budgets are tight, their headcount's always getting scrutinized, and they're fairly risk adverse. And so when that happens, they default to hiring experience because hiring experienced candidates feels safer oftentimes than hiring somebody that might be riskier because they don't have experience. So I think that's something that I feel like in some cases is a mistake when hiring managers are too focused on experience or too focused on niche skills or domain expertise, because a lot of that can be learned. and can be learned fairly quickly. Now, sometimes you need some of that, but a lot of times you don't need the nth degree of it to be successful in the role. And the other thing I'd say is comp. Comp is all over the place right now. Comp has come down generally across the SE roles and SE management positions as well. There's still a lot of companies that pay really, really well, but there's also companies that I think are really trying to take advantage of the imbalance in the market and lowering comp considerably. And I think that the mistake there is that if you hire an SC and you bring him in fairly low, that's great, at least for the time being, because it lowers your cost basis, right, for the team and your CAC and all that. But what happens is that you're going to have that SC for 18 months, and then they're going to get a recruiter pinging them with a role that is going to increase their income by 50K or more. And we see this all the time. In fact, we work with a lot of clients in that exact position where they took an SC role because they thought it was the right thing to do, but the comp was really low. Then they got a year and a half of experience, and now they can go get a much higher paying role, and they're kind of stuck in a position where they need to take that because they need to support their family and things like that. And so I think, again, employers think that starting with really low comp can be helpful, but then it ends up hurting them because they lose all of that that experience and that investment in that individual potentially after 12 or 18 months anyways.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that we see as well.
That's likely because, if you open a solution engineering role today, you're likely going to be, and this is what people say when I meet with leaders,
Yeah.
they're flooded, right? And they're so flooded with interest that
Yeah.
they're almost scared to open it. And it's like, I can't go through 300 resumes.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have 300 people looking at this, maybe I can lower, maybe we can get a deal here, right? But it's a very short term thought. Now some people are operating in short term mindsets because that's where they have to operate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the investment firm is the one pushing that on them, and they have to make these decisions to make the number look good, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And so I'd say some people are under a lot of pressure, and they're probably making decisions they don't want to make.
Yeah.
But do you think it's true that this is happening with all the applicants and the sort of like are you hearing the same thing from leaders who have open roles that they're getting flooded with applicants?
Yeah. Everybody says they have way more applicants than they can handle, but not enough of the right applicants that really fit what they're looking for. And so in a lot of cases, we've actually heard a lot of cases where, we've had talent teams and hiring managers say, yeah, we don't even look at the inbound stuff, or we'll maybe skim through the inbound applicants we get, but we're going to go out and source and headhunt the people that we really want, because that's actually easier than filtering through hundreds of applications to figure out if there's a diamond in the rough in there. And so what we've heard from a lot of people, especially when we're doing the recruiting, is that, the passive candidates are really the ones that we want, because they're going to really hit a lot of more of the check boxes in our criteria, rather than some of the applicants that we get, because the applicants could, there's so many in there, and who knows if they're the right stuff. And so that's what a lot of employers are challenged with right now. So it's been interesting to hear that from employers, is that they'd rather just go and hunt for the people they want versus sifting through all the applications.
I think it's my mind goes to like, I could see people saying that's a great use case for AI. Let's skim resumes, and then
Yeah.
let's let AI decide which ones are more qualified. And I just can't help but think of the massive amount of bias.
Bias, yeah. I think that's the biggest
Gotta be
hesitation.
it's hard enough today. If you have a
Yeah.
name that's not Chris, or if you have a background that's not standard, like you're going to be kicked out, right?
Yeah. I think that's the biggest hesitation with companies or talent teams going all in with AI to sort through applications, is the bias that would potentially exist. So yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting time in talent acquisition and recruiting and hiring. And I think there's a lot, just like in a lot of other parts of the business, right? Teams are trying to figure out how to best leverage AI in the right
Absolutely.
way. And so that's definitely happening here too.
You mentioned passive, and my assumption on the definition of this term is that is somebody who is currently employed and not actively seeking a shift? Is that what that means by somebody who's passive in the market?
That's right. Yeah, somebody
Okay.
that the recruiter is going to go reach out to and who's would entertain a new opportunity, but isn't actively looking. Yeah,
That is interesting. I think there's like a saying like the best person for the job already has a job.
that's
That I've
often the
heard.
case.
Um, and I understand, but I also feel for those who have been part of a riff that was a completely out of their own control situation, and now they're kind of bucketed into that. You know.
Yeah, and we work with a lot of people that are in between roles or have been impacted by rifts. That's probably 40% of the people we work with, and there's a lot of really good people, yeah, that were impacted and fortunately they're able to turn around fairly quickly and oftentimes get into an even better role than they were previously, better comp, better opportunities. So those are always fun success stories because it starts with them getting laid off and they're thinking, oh man, the sky is falling, everything's terrible, and then we work with them and a couple months later they're actually in a better situation than they were previously and they're so excited. And so those are always fun to be a part of those journeys.
It's funny how that happens in life sometimes. It's
Yeah,
sometimes the full uproot that we go through and we didn't seek out, and it's like super devastating, is the thing that unlocks you to get to the next stage.
yeah,
But it never comes packaged that way, right? You don't get
right,
laid off and think this is awesome. You get laid off and think, what am I doing tomorrow?
exactly.
But it is funny how a lot of us. I've been through acquisitions and things that have kind of pushed me into new roles, always for the better, but it's doesn't make it easy.
Doesn't make it easy. And honestly, that's a lot of what we talk about in those initial conversations is just trying to help people understand that this can actually be a good thing. And we've seen this play out many times. So even though it feels tough right now, we're going to help you get to a much better place. And it may take a couple months, but a lot of what we do is trying to, yeah, help build that confidence back up, lift people up, and know that there's actually a great path forward for them if they're ready to put the energy in and follow the process. So, but yeah, it can be tough at first for sure.
Yeah, I bet. What's a realistic time frame you're seeing? So if you're, if in today's market,
Yeah.
realistic time frame for the process.
Yeah, I would say it varies depending on the individual. I mean, there's definitely stats out there that on average it takes probably 6 to 9 months to get a new role, but that's I think across a lot of different types of roles in tech. Well, what we see specifically with our clients is our average is about 70 to 75 days from when we start to work with them till when we get in the role. And that includes the interview process that can take, 4 to 6 weeks sometimes. That's on average, and I'd say that's pretty consistent for especially for senior ICs, individual contributors. For leaders, it can take a bit longer, so we'll call it 3 months, so 90 days probably for leaders, and that's because a few reasons. One is just there's limited opportunities, but two, the interview processes for leaders can take 6 to 8 plus weeks sometimes. We've seen some really long processes for leaders. Hiring teams are just taking their sweet time when it comes to interviewing leaders sometimes. So we've had some leader interview processes that have been very fast. I mean, there was one that was actually like 1 week, and it was a small startup, so they were able to move fast. But for leaders, a little bit longer. And then if you're a first time SC, I would give yourself 4 to 6 months probably realistically, just because you're having to really find opportunities that where there's hiring teams that are willing to take a chance on a first time SC, and they're also having to learn a lot about how to be an SC as part of your journey, and so that can take some time. And just like baseball, right? You're not going to hit your first ball out of the park. It's going to take a few misses and a few rejections before you can get there. And so for first time SCs, we say be ready for a 4 to 6 month journey. But if you're committed to that and you stick with it and you follow the process, you will get there. But it does take a bit more time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It takes a lot of grit.
a lot of grit, a lot
Yeah,
of
which is
showing up
good because
consistently.
being in our profession does take a lot of grit. So
It does.
it's
Yeah,
definitely a setup because it's not an easy role.
yeah.
What we're going to do is we're going to talk the one thing everybody's curious about, which is comp, and then we're going to go into some of the practical things, and then the lightning round, and we'll land the plane. So let's
Okay.
talk about comp because I have to admit, when I see your posts and you guys do some posts, I think it's you're as careful as possible when it comes to personal data here, but like you'll tell a story about how somebody came in and you have found these 50K plus improvements on their roles, or you'll talk about like secrets to negotiating your comp package.
Yeah.
Um, what's the secret sauce here? Because I've seen some numbers and I'm like, I want those numbers, right? And
Right.
I'm like, I don't know how this is happening. So give us some inside intel here on how to increase comp when you're in this process.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, a lot of it's we work with a lot of people that are in their SE roles, but they, like we talked about before, they've maybe been in the role for a year or two, and they came in fairly underpaid, and they're ready to take on that next role so they can get that big pay jump. And so we've had some people, multiple people that have had 90, 100, 110K plus increases on their OTE. And where it really starts is not at the negotiation stage. That's kind of like the last part that we'll try to get the last remaining bit from. Where it starts is the very beginning of the process. And what I mean by that is there's no like one thing that you can do throughout the process to make you the most impressive candidate. Our approach is to look at every interaction with the employer through the entire process and find ways to make yourself stand out at every interaction and be excellent at every interaction. And that means everything from the resume to your LinkedIn to the emails you send to not only what you do and say on the interview, but what do you do before that interview? What do you do after that interview to interact with the right people in the organization? And what happens is when you do everything a little bit better than every candidate, all those things start to stack up to make you far and away better and differentiated from everybody else. And when you do that, when you become the must hire candidate that they can't lose because the difference between you and the next best candidate is such a big gap, they're willing to pay you much more than they would otherwise. And so we often see at the end of the process is we have employers come in at the very top of the range or even above the stated salary range that was discussed in the beginning because that candidate was so impressive through the process. So that's part of it, is just really setting yourself up to be that must hire candidate, because then you have the most leverage to get the best offer. But then of course, when you get that offer, we want to not stop there either. We want to make sure we maximize it because there's usually room to get an increase. I would say that in the last 10 offers that we've had in the last couple of weeks, maybe one of them didn't get an increase of at least something, and some of them got as high as 30, 40K on top of the initial offer. And those were leaders, so it obviously depends on your level as far as the amount of percentage that you can increase. But yeah, so that's part of it. And then as far as when it comes to negotiation, like the main things are kind of simple. It's like, don't be afraid to ask, provide justification, but always ask. As long as you ask in a professional and courteous and grateful way, you're never going to get turned down. As far as like, they're never going to pull the offer. They're just going to say maybe no is the worst case, the outcome there. But then also when you ask, you have to be very confident and steadfast in your ask. You don't really want to waver from what you believe your worth is, but you also have to understand what the right number is. And that's where we come in, or it's important to talk to other people who are familiar with SC comp and market rates, so that that could be other hiring managers or recruiters. So talk to people to understand what the right level to ask for is. And that's ultimately how you're able to have leverage and get what you want in a negotiation cycle. And we really encourage people to do it because much more often than not, you get at least something as far as that extra, a base salary or variable or OT or signing bonus or equity. So there's a lot more that you can get potentially there than people actually get. And so we try to make sure that they maximize their offer and don't leave anything on the table.
Man, if there's one value prop, and maybe I'll get a discount because we're friends, but if there's one value prop from this whole thing, it's like it's that exact. It's how do you state the ask? How do you prep yourself to get
Yeah.
to the point where you're confident in stating? Because if you've been in the job market for a while and you see an offer coming, you're like, I'm taking this thing. I'm done, And
Yeah.
it's really hard to pump the brakes and say, okay, this is not the end, and I have to go in confidently to negotiate. That's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually at a pre-sales collective happy hour yesterday out here in Seattle, and I was talking
Cool.
to an SC who was, had a few years of experience, and she was about to take on a new role within her new company, and she was trying to ask about like how do I negotiate this comp for this new role, and she was debating between 10K difference between where she was and where she wanted to be. And I said, well, based on the scope of the role and based on how much they value you, it sounds like they really value you based on the things that they're saying. I would actually shoot for much higher than that, realistically, even though that's above the range that they provided, because at the end of the day, the reality is if they want to hire somebody externally for that role, they're going to have to pay much more because the scope of it, the responsibility that is required, and the experience is required. So, I think that just opened her eyes to, oh yeah, maybe I can actually ask for more. Now, will she get all that? Maybe not, but she'll probably find, a spot in the middle that makes sense for both sides. And so I think that sometimes you just have to know, what the value you bring is, and also what the scope and the responsibility look like relative to the actual comp for that role. So that's just another example to throw out there.
It's a good example. And sometimes knowing your value is, sometimes it's as simple as somebody telling you can do it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sometimes it's
yeah,
somebody, it's as simple as having a champion on your back saying, go ahead, you're worth it, man.
yeah.
Ask. Like, we all need those friends in life, and it's just another one of those moments where you need, sometimes it's as simple as somebody giving you permission to do it, even though you didn't need permission in the first place.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
if somebody's realizing and they want to up the game, so let's say they're in the job search game right now, but they're like, oh my God, I just heard a 100K increase and I heard about all these job placements. Immediately after listening to this, what's step one?
Step one, I think for just generally would be start networking, especially with people that understand the market a bit. So that would be recruiters, hiring managers, people who can also help you understand your blind spots when it comes to marketing yourself as a strong candidate in the job market. You can certainly reach out to us and apply to work with us in our coaching program, since that's exactly what we do all day. But of course, you don't have to work with us. There's a lot of great leaders and recruiters out there that can help guide you on that. So I would say start networking with those folks. And I would say the other thing that is important when going through the process is when you're applying and interviewing, you don't get a lot of feedback from hiring teams for a lot of different reasons, but you don't get a lot of real feedback. And so it's important to work with somebody. It could be a colleague, it could be another manager, but ideally somebody that understands the SC role or whatever role you're applying for, somebody that can give you the harsh feedback around the stories you're telling, the narrative that you have, how you're showing up with the energy and confidence, right? Do you need to improve there or on the delivery of how you articulate your stories and your skills and your experience? So I would say find a way to get some feedback on all of that, because it's hard to know your blind spots, and until you get some real harsh feedback, you're not going to be able to improve, and ultimately that's what it's all about, is improving so that you can put your best foot forward in these conversations and in these interviews.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
That harsh feedback is, and as somebody who's just hired somebody, there are two things. The thing you walk through with those individual moments standing out throughout the process, it's exactly what the candidate did that I ended up hiring here at Reprise.
I love
Every
it.
single step along the way, it was a tad bit, it was just a tad bit more effort, a tad bit
Yeah.
better. And all of that at the end added up. I look for I look for highly qualified people for the role, obviously. But one of the attributes I love is to see hunger in somebody,
Hunger.
somebody who is hungry for the work, who wants to get in and make a change, who is not just like, you can tell as a hiring manager if the person's reaching out to you, if you are just one of the resumes they're sending out, or if you're, it's silly obvious sometimes.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
that's what
Yeah.
they did, is every single time. And it was like, hey, we're going to meet in person. It's like, I'm going to be there on the first flight, not the second flight, not the third flight. I'll be there waiting for you in the morning. And those are the things that were like, wow, if this person is willing to get up at 4 in the morning and hit the airport for this
Right.
and wait 3 hours until I can get there, then what else can they do? And that's the stuff that kind of like at the very end of the line, that's the stuff that checks the box.
Yep.
So we have a quick hit fire round, and then we'll wrap. Just some quick questions for you, and then we'll talk about how to get a hold of you. Um, what's the biggest time waster you see in SE job searches?
I would say tailoring your resume for the ATS or for every job. Some tailoring for specific jobs is okay, but a lot of SEs spend way too much time on that. And the reality is we preach that you shouldn't rely on an ATS or some recruiter to make a decision as to whether they should interview you or not. Our approach is to get in front of the right people, which is the decision makers, the influencers in the organization. So spend less time on worrying about tweaking your resume and more time getting visible in front of the right people.
What's ATS stand for?
Applicant tracking system.
Okay, so it's the automated system that your resume gets into.
Yeah. When you
Okay.
submit a job, yeah, that's what it gets into, and that's where the recruiter will typically review it.
I see some people and they're like highly vocal people on LinkedIn who are like, I'll never go back to in person. Hybrid work is the best. Remote work is the best.
Yeah.
Or I can't work at home. I have to go into an office. What do you what are the trends you're seeing here?
Yeah, it's really a mixed bag. I mean, we talk to people every day, and some people are, yeah, I would love a remote. I need to be a remote. Some people really want to be in the office again because they've been in remote for a long time, and they want more of that face to face. And so it really varies. I would say that from what we're seeing from a company perspective, a lot of companies had a lot of hard, strict RTO mandates. We've seen them quietly soften or be more relaxed on those from what we've seen. But there are some companies too, especially small startups that are based in SF and New York in particular, that are pretty intense about in-office culture, which makes sense if you're trying to build a small company from scratch and grow fast. So, but yeah, I'll say it is all over the place. So, if you're looking for remote jobs, there's plenty of them out there. If you're looking for an in-office job, especially in SF or New York, that's great because there's a lot of options there. And if you're in those cities, the candidate pool is much more narrow and smaller, so you have a good chance of getting those roles if you are a good fit for them, if you're willing to go in the office, at least hybrid or full time.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good. Biggest red flag you see on job postings?
For me, it's probably every time I see those pre 2021 buzzwords like rocket ship or unicorn or things like that, they kind of make me cringe a little bit just because we all know, how all that unfolded. I think the other thing that, can be a little bit of a red flag, not always, but is just not displaying the comp range, or if the comp range is really wide. It's just so common these days, especially in the US. It varies by country, but in the US, it's very common. So if the comp range is not listed, it can be kind of a question like, are they not displaying it because it's going to be not competitive and too low? So that would be one that I think people should just get used to seeing and are used to seeing. And so if employers can put it out there, then that's better for everybody.
I had a recruiter reach out and had a job listing, and they were like, "Hey, are you interested?" The comp range was like 215 to 575.
Yeah,
What?
yeah,
This is like more than double the original on target earnings. Like, what is even? And it made me. I mean, I'm not in the market, but it made me super questionable because I was like, this is obviously it's so wide that it just means that they're just making a decision based on your. It's not even a real comp range.
it's not even
Like
real. Yeah,
like like no CFO is going to say, yeah, that's the comp range we're going for. Like that's so
yeah.
unpredictable.
Yeah, it's interesting when you see those really wide ranges, but I think companies are getting better at it, but it's still not, we're not completely there yet. So
Well, Yuji, you're on LinkedIn a lot. Is that the best place to reach out to you?
yeah, LinkedIn is great. If you want to connect with me there, folks want to follow me. We post a lot. Also, my co-founder Maddie Stremick, she posts a lot too. So a lot of educational content. People reach out to us often and say how helpful some of that content is. So definitely follow us. And also our website, we have a lot of resources like a job board specifically for SC and AE roles. We also have a newsletter that we put out weekly that we've gotten good feedback on, that it's helped people in their career journeys and in their job search. So those would be the best ways to connect with us and leverage some of the resources that we provide to help you take that next step in your SC career.
Thank you, Yuji. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on Solution Heroes. I really appreciate you, everything you're doing to move the profession forward. If you're listening, please reach out, connect, give me feedback, reach out and connect to me. I always want to hear whether you're watching it. What can I be doing better? We are here to grow and learn together. We cannot do this alone. So thank you for joining me for another great episode, and take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye, y'all.